Have you ever felt like the conventional rules of dating and relationships just simply do not align with reality?
Yeah, that is a really common frustration.
Right. I mean, it's like you were actively following this script you were handed a long time ago.
Hmm.
Be polite, be a gentleman, be relentlessly accommodating. But somehow you were just not getting the results that this script explicitly promised you.
Exactly. You feel like you're doing everything right, but it's just not working.
Yeah, you hit your marks, you say your lines, but the ending of the movie just keeps falling flat.
Hmm.
And that feeling, that specific feeling of following a broken script, is the exact phenomenon we are mapping out today. Welcome to today's deep dive.
I'm really looking forward to getting into this one. It's a lot to unpack.
It really is. Today, we are exploring a book from 2013 that fundamentally altered the landscape of the internet. It is called The Rational Male by Rollo Tomassi.
Right. And just for some context, this specific text was actually compiled from a decade of blog posts. And over time, it has grown to be widely considered the foundational text, like really the absolute cornerstone of the online manosphere.
So our mission today is to objectively unpack this highly polarizing, influential text, just to really understand its underlying architecture. But before we get into the weeds here, we have to make a very explicit point to you, the listener.
Yes, this is crucial. The source material we are examining today touches on some of the most intense, politically charged debates in our modern culture. We're talking about gender dynamics, feminism, and, what it fundamentally means to be masculine.
Right, so we want to be crystal clear regarding our role here. We are not taking sides, we are not endorsing the viewpoints of the author, and we aren't validating the specific criticisms against him either.
Exactly. Our goal is purely analytical. We're just researchers examining a cultural artifact.
Yeah, think of us as impartial guides. We are just mapping out Tomassi's arguments and the worldview he constructed so you can understand the mechanics of this influential ideology for yourself.
Because honestly, to truly understand the modern internet and the modern vernacular around dating, you really have to understand the ideas that shaped it, regardless of how you might personally feel about those specific ideas.
Okay, let's unpack this. To understand the entire worldview of the rational male, you first have to understand its foundational metaphor. And it is one that, well, almost everyone is familiar with. It's borrowed from the 1999 film The Matrix.
Right, the whole red pill, blue pill concept.
Exactly. The author argues that society as a whole is blue-pilled. And in this context, being blue-pilled means remaining blissfully ignorant. It means living in a simulated, socially constructed reality that is just made up of comforting falsehoods about love, romance, and gender relations.
Right, it's the idea that what we are taught is just a comforting lie.
Yeah, and Tomassi argues that men, specifically, must choose to take the red pill to wake up, to see the world exactly as it is, rather than how they just, wish it to be.
And in this specific framework, seeing the world as it truly is means recognizing a pervasive system of control. What's fascinating here is how Tomassi adapts this science fiction concept of the Matrix into a very grounded sociological claim.
Oh, right, because it's not about little robots or anything.
No, not at all. He argues that the societal matrix is built for a single specific purpose, which is to protect and uphold what he calls the feminine imperative.
The feminine imperative.
Yeah.
Yeah, that concept really serves as the core thesis of the entire book. Like, if you don't get that, you don't get the book.
Exactly. The feminine imperative, according to the text, is a prevailing social order that systematically prioritizes female interests, female desires, and female sexual strategies over those of men.
And he claims this happens at a cost.
Yes. Tomassi asserts this happens almost entirely at the expense of men's individual autonomy.
When reading through the source material, the most clarifying way to conceptualize this feminine imperative is to view it as an invisible operating system running in the background of society.
That's a great way to put it.
Yeah, like if you think about your computer or your phone, the operating system dictates what programs can run and how they function, but you never actually look at the code itself.
Right, you just click the apps and expect them to work.
Exactly. It is so ubiquitous, so baked into the daily user experience that we just completely overlook it. We just accept it as how things are. The book famously states, quote, "It's a woman's world," unquote, arguing that women exercise this dominance covertly.
Right, because they don't need to overtly advertise their power. The cultural operating system is already doing the heavy lifting for them.
So how does this actually look in the real world? Like,
Uh,
what evidence does he give for this operating system?
Well, the author provides a wide array of evidence for how this allegedly manifests. For instance, he points to media and culture. arguing that women's perspectives, their emotional needs, and their grievances are constantly centered in entertainment and news.
While men's issues are pushed aside.
Exactly. He claims men's issues are routinely marginalized or they're just reduced to a punchline in a sitcom. He also points to law and public policy, claiming that institutions like family courts and divorce laws are systematically rigged to favor women.
Like with alimony and custody.
Right. The argument is that the system expects men to provide alimony because society is deeply conditioned to put female financial security first, above everything else.
And if we look at the text, this conditioning supposedly reaches down into the most basic, everyday social norms too. There's this incredibly provocative claim in the book about childhood development.
Oh, the part about raising sons.
Yeah. Tomassi writes that when a mother sits her young son down and tells him to be a gentleman, she isn't just teaching him basic manners. According to this framework, that boy is actually being groomed to conform to a future girlfriend's whims.
It's a very intense way to look at standard parenting.
It really is. The argument is that he is being trained from birth to prioritize a woman's comfort and emotional state over his own personal agency.
And that conditioning, according to the book, extends right into the mechanics of adult relationships. The text argues that women ultimately control reproduction through primary access to birth control.
Which he claims is a massive leverage point.
A huge one. He even claims it's frequently used without a man's knowledge or consent. And furthermore, that women are the true selectors in the dating marketplace. There is a stark quote in the book summarizing this dynamic, which is, "You like to think you chose your partner, but she actually chose you."
Wow. Which naturally leads to a really crucial archetype in the book, the nice guy. Because if men are continually conditioned by this operating system to be endlessly accommodating, society just ends up mass-producing an army of nice guys.
Right, the guys who do everything quote-unquote right.
Yeah. But looking at this analytically, one has to ask why the text is so ruthlessly critical of this behavior. I mean, kindness is universally considered a virtue, right?
Yeah.
Why does Tomassi view the nice guy as a systemic failure?
That distinction is critical because it requires us to look at the underlying psychology Tomassi is claiming to expose here. He is not arguing that genuine, no-strings-attached kindness is a negative trait.
Okay, so it's not anti-kindness.
Right. He is arguing that the stereotypical nice guy isn't actually acting out of genuine kindness. The text views this specific brand of niceness as a highly manipulative, covert mating strategy.
Covert meaning it's done secretly, with an ulterior motive.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It is framed as a form of covert narcissism where a man utilizes constant people-pleasing and self-sacrifice as a currency. He's using it to purchase approval and affection.
So he's essentially signing a secret, unspoken contract that the woman never actually agreed to.
Precisely. A contract that says, if I am perfectly accommodating to your needs, you are obligated to give me romance or sex.
It is entirely transactional, but the terms of the transaction are completely hidden from the other person.
Yes. And when that covert strategy inevitably fails, when the woman simply isn't biologically or emotionally attracted to this highly accommodating, unassertive behavior, the nice guy rarely just walks away gracefully.
Right, because he feels like he paid for something he didn't get.
Exactly. Because he feels cheated out of his secret contract, he becomes intensely resentful, bitter, and angry. Tomassi argues this is the ultimate trap of the blue pill. It actively teaches men to prioritize female approval over their own genuine desires, which just sets them up for massive failure and deep psychological resentment.
So if we accept this premise that the social deck is stacked, this idea of the feminine imperative serving as the operating system, it begs a massive question about human nature.
It really does.
Because Tomassi doesn't just blame cultural conditioning here. He roots this societal structure entirely in biology. To understand the why behind this framework, we really have to look at the evolutionary engine driving it.
And that engine is the cornerstone concept of the entire text, hypergamy. Tomassi leans heavily on evolutionary biology and psychology to explain why the operating system functions the way it does.
Yeah, hypergamy is a term that permeates almost every single page of the source material.
It is the biological foundation of Tomassi's entire worldview. Hypergamy is defined here as the deeply ingrained evolutionary tendency for women to seek mates of higher socioeconomic status, greater physical dominance, and stronger social influence.
Basically dating up.
Right. In the author's own vernacular, the cardinal rule of hypergamy is a biological mandate to always trade up when the opportunity presents itself.
We really need to break down the evolutionary logic the author uses to justify this claim, because it's a bold one.
What's fascinating here is the sheer, brutal pragmatism of the biological argument Tomassi presents. The text argues that because a female's reproductive investment is so incredibly high, involving 9 months of pregnancy, lactation, and years of vulnerable child rearing.
Right, it's a massive physical toll.
Yes. So because of that, women are evolutionarily hardwired to secure the absolute best genetic material and the most reliable provisioning resources available.
Whereas a man's investment can be totally different.
Exactly. A man's biological investment in reproduction can theoretically be momentary. A woman's investment is life-altering and physically taxing. Therefore, the text argues, her mating strategy must be ruthlessly selective, calculating, and relentlessly upwardly mobile just to ensure the survival of her offspring.
And this biological urgency leads to a phenomenon the book calls the epiphany phase. According to the text, this phase typically occurs in a woman's late 20s or early 30s.
Right, when the biological reality sets in.
Yeah, the argument is that when a woman realizes her biological clock is ticking, her hypergamous instincts suddenly shift gears. She pivots rapidly from seeking short-term excitement or physical thrill to prioritizing a man with solid, long-term provisioning potential.
She develops, as Tomassi writes, a limbic understanding that her genetic chips need to be cashed in.
And this shift directly ties into how the text views male value in the dating marketplace. Tomassi is absolutely adamant that women are biologically programmed to be attracted to realized value, not potential value.
This is a huge distinction in the book.
Here's where it gets really interesting. There's a specific quote that crystallizes this difference between realized versus potential value. He says, quote, "Hypergamy only believes the dominance of a man that a woman finds in him, never the dominance a woman needs to create in him."
That is a very telling quote.
Yeah, and when reading that, the clearest way to visualize this concept is to look at real estate. According to this text, a woman's biological imperative is driving her to look for a move-in-ready house.
She wants the finished product.
Exactly. She wants the luxury finishes, the solid foundation, and the great neighborhood already fully established. She absolutely does not want a fixer-upper. She doesn't want to invest the time doing the emotional drywall and psychological plumbing to build a man's dominance from scratch.
That analogy perfectly captures the mechanics of the author's argument. He posits that this requirement for realized value is a fundamental, unchanging aspect of feminine nature.
Which is another capitalized term in the book.
Right, and this nature includes other highly debated traits as well, most notably solipsism. Now, the text redefines solipsism not merely as standard selfishness, but as a strict evolutionary necessity.
We should probably clarify the evolutionary mechanics of that term. Why is viewing the world strictly through their own lens an evolutionary necessity for women in this specific framework?
Well, the author's logic dictates that in our deep evolutionary past, a mother's primary objective was the immediate survival of her vulnerable infant.
Okay, so it all comes back to the child.
Yes. She could not afford to care about abstract ideals or fairness to the tribe or even the emotional well-being of her mate if those things threatened her child's resources. She had to view the world strictly through the lens of what benefited her and her offspring.
It's pure survival.
Exactly. And the text argues that this ancient survival mechanism remains active today, resulting in an emotional framework where a woman's subjective reality and immediate needs always supersede objective facts or male sacrifices.
Wow. Okay, so if hypergamy dictates that women are biologically driven to seek this pre-established dominance and resources, it creates a very harsh dividing line for male behavior.
It really does.
The men who exhibit these high-value traits fall on one side, and everyone else falls on the other, which is how the book arrives at its alpha-beta spectrum.
But we must be precise with how the text uses the terms alpha and beta. It does not view them as a strict binary where a man is either 100% alpha or 100% beta.
It's not just a switch you flip.
Yeah. No, it is presented as a fluid evolutionary spectrum. Alpha traits are behaviors like unshakable confidence, financial independence, physical assertiveness, and leadership.
So the move-in-ready traits.
Exactly. These are the markers that signal high realized value to female hypergamy. Beta traits, on the other hand, are things like endless accommodation, a desperate need for external approval, emotional dependence, and submissiveness.
The nice guy traits.
Right. And the primary goal of the Red Pill Awakening is for a man to consciously audit his behavior and aggressively move himself toward the alpha end of that spectrum.
So if we step back for a second, we have established the underlying rules of the game according to Tomassi. We have the feminine imperative controlling the social layer, and we have hypergamy driving the biological layer.
That is the foundation, yes.
Once a reader accepts this rather bleak framework, the book immediately pivots to actionable strategies. Like, how does a man actually navigate this reality? And the most famous, and undoubtedly the most controversial tool the author offers, is called plate theory.
Plate theory. Yes, this is a conceptual metaphor for spinning multiple plates at once, like a circus performer.
Okay, so what does that mean practically?
In highly practical terms, it dictates that a man should actively date multiple women simultaneously, deliberately withholding exclusivity or deep commitment to any single one of them until he is absolutely ready and has fully explored his market value.
Okay, when looking at the mechanics of spinning plates, the immediate question that arises is whether this framework simply relies on deception or emotional unavailability. I mean, it sounds like a blueprint for just stringing multiple partners along.
That is absolutely the most prominent criticism leveled against the theory by its detractors. But to map out Tomassi's defense, he frames this strategy entirely around male psychology and emotional self-preservation.
How so?
He argues that spinning plates is the only effective way for a man to cultivate an abundance mindset rather than suffering from a scarcity mindset.
Okay, to put that in perspective, it is remarkably similar to basic negotiation psychology, like going on a job hunt.
That's a good comparison.
Yeah, if you only have one single job interview lined up, you exude desperation. You are terrified of making a mistake, and you will likely accept a terrible salary just to secure the role because you think it's your only shot.
Right, you have zero leverage.
But if you already have 3 lucrative job offers sitting on your desk, you walk into that 4th interview completely relaxed, confident, and willing to walk away if the terms aren't perfect. The book is essentially applying ruthless market economics to human romance.
That is an incredibly accurate translation of the text's logic. If a man believes a single woman is his only romantic option, he will tolerate bad behavior, compromise his personal boundaries, and rapidly slide right back into those subservient beta traits we discussed earlier, just to keep her.
Because he's operating from scarcity.
Exactly. By maintaining multiple options, he protects himself emotionally from being manipulated. Furthermore, the text makes the highly controversial claim that spinning plates actively increases a man's attractiveness.
Wait, really? How does that work?
Well, Tomassi suggests that female hypergamy inherently senses this abundance. He argues that, quote, women would rather share a high-value man than be stuck with a faithful loser, unquote.
Wow, that is a heavy claim. And that concept directly contrasts with the opposite psychological state, which the book diagnoses as onitis.
Right. Onitis is presented not just as a mistake, but as severe psychological pathology within this framework.
Like a disease.
Yeah. It is defined as the unhealthy, all-consuming obsession with a single romantic interest.
It is the ultimate manifestation of putting someone on a pedestal.
Exactly. When a man suffers from onitis, he projects entirely unrealistic, idealized expectations onto a normal human woman. He views her as a flawless soulmate who is just going to magically complete his life.
Which puts a massive burden on her, too, honestly.
It does. And because he has placed his entire identity and happiness in her hands, he loses his self-worth and entirely ignores his own personal growth.
So plate theory is the antidote.
Yes, plate theory is presented as the bitter but necessary cure to onitis. By recognizing the sheer abundance of potential partners in the world, a man maintains a self-focused, growth-oriented mindset. He learns to value himself entirely independently of any particular woman's validation.
Okay, so what does this all mean in the aggregate? We have mapped out the macro-societal level of the matrix. We've drilled down into the biological level of hypergamy and analyzed the practical dating strategies of spinning plates. But what is the ultimate endgame of this entire philosophy?
The ultimate goal is the cultivation of a deeply resilient psychological state, which Tomassi labels as positive masculinity.
Positive masculinity.
Yes. To fully grasp this, we can look at the 2 distinct psychological archetypes the book lays out as the endpoints of this journey.
You have the blue pill beta on one side and the red pill awakened alpha on the other.
Exactly. And the core difference lies in their psychology. The blue-pilled man operates with what behavioral psychologists call an external locus of control.
Just to clarify for the listener, having an external locus of control You believe your life outcomes are dictated by outside forces, like luck, society, or other people. You are essentially just a passenger in your own life.
That's right. The blue-pilled man is naive. He is entirely dependent on external validation from the feminine imperative, and ultimately, he's frustrated when the societal system doesn't reward his obedient compliance with romance.
He's waiting for the reward that never comes.
Right. Conversely, the red pill awakened man operates with a strict internal locus of control. He takes absolute agency over his life.
He's driving the car.
Yes. He is acutely aware of the evolutionary dynamics at play, he is self-reliant, and most importantly, he utilizes sublimation.
Okay, let's break down sublimation, because it is a key mechanism here. In plain English, sublimation is essentially taking a frustrated or primal energy, like intense anger about dating rejections or sexual frustration, and consciously redirecting it into something highly productive.
Using it as fuel.
Exactly. Instead of sending angry text messages to someone who rejected him, the red pill awakened man redirects that exact same energy into hitting the gym, building a business, or mastering a new skill.
And that mechanism is the core of Tomassi's concept of positive masculinity. It is really about reclaiming traditional foundational traits.
Which are what, exactly?
He advocates for aggressive self-reliance, physical and mental assertiveness, and taking absolute personal responsibility for one's market value. He wants men to define their own lives, pursue their own purpose, and refuse to be beholden to the expectations of the societal operating system.
And if we connect this to the bigger picture, this is where the rational male transcends being merely an underground dating manual. It really reveals itself as a major, highly partisan intervention in the modern culture wars.
Oh, absolutely. It's much bigger than just dating.
Yeah, Tomassi forcefully argues that fluid, modern redefinitions of masculinity are deliberately weaponized by the feminine imperative to disempower, confuse, and feminize men. He views traditional masculine virtues as biologically essential, not just for the individual well-being of men, but for the stability of society as a whole.
And as we have established throughout this analysis, this framework is intensely polarizing.
Extremely.
Critics argue forcefully that Tomassi's views are deeply cynical and reductive. They argue that he reduces complex, beautiful human emotional connections to ruthless economic transactions.
Right, the whole job interview analogy we used earlier.
Exactly. And that his framework relies heavily on reinforcing negative, outdated evolutionary stereotypes about both men and women. They claim his work promotes a deeply combative zero-sum view of gender relations.
But his supporters argue just as forcefully on the other side. They maintain that he is simply stripping away dangerous romantic illusions to reveal the stark, unfiltered truth of human nature.
They see it as a necessary wake-up call.
Yeah, they see his work as a vital, pragmatic toolkit that allows men to reclaim their agency and sanity in a modern society that has systematically marginalized them.
The text undeniably forces a confrontation with our most deeply held assumptions. It is designed from the ground up as a provocative call to awaken, to look at the raw mechanics of human interaction and see the world as it is, not as we wish it to be.
So whether you view Tomassi's framework as a harsh, necessary truth that saves men from despair, or a cynical, manipulative reinforcement of toxic stereotypes, its massive influence on the modern world is simply undeniable.
It has literally shaped the vernacular of the internet.
It really has. Terms like red pill, hypergamy, and the alpha-beta dynamic have bled completely out of the niche manosphere and right into mainstream cultural dialogue. They're showing up in movies, podcasts, and everyday conversations.
You can't escape them.
No, you can't. So we want you, the listener, to consider how these hidden dynamics, or at the very least, society's growing belief in these hidden dynamics, might be influencing the world around you. Think about the media you consume, the social norms you accept without questioning, and the relationship advice you hear every single day. Are you operating on a pre-written script? And if so, who actually wrote it?
You know, this raises an important question, one that isn't explicitly resolved in the text, but naturally flows from understanding its architecture. Well, if we accept the foundational premise of this book, that women are driven by the inescapable evolutionary mandate of hypergamy, and men are equally driven by a biological mandate to pursue alpha traits and spin plates for reproductive success.
We're all just following biological code.
Right. That's true. Independent free will and romantic love even exists.
Oh, wow. That is a fascinating philosophical dilemma. I mean, if both sexes are just acting out deeply ingrained, inescapable biological scripts for survival and reproduction, are any of us actually making real choices when we fall in love?
Or are we just playing out the programming?
Exactly. Are we all, regardless of whether we consider ourselves red-pilled or blue-pilled, ultimately just playing out our ancient biological programming. It makes you wonder, even if you finally realize you are reading from a script, can you ever actually leave the stage? But that is a deep dive for another day. Thanks for joining us, and we'll catch you next time.